So a couple weeks ago, Steve comes up to me and says, "We're all going to be gone. It's all on you." I said, "Great. I love public speaking. That's just wonderful." But I was trying to figure out. He says it's just 15, 20 minutes maybe. Fill up, and I'm like, "Boy, that seems like a long time." And then I got thinking. I'm like, maybe if I shared my testimony. I was like, because then you're not trying to come up with points and things like that. You're actually just remembering what God did for you. So that's what today's going to be, is you're going to see kind of like a little bit more of what a lot of us probably hide. The older I get, the more I see and hear almost every family has dirty laundry, you know. It doesn't seem like there's any perfect family out there, and it also feels like we're kind of, everybody's a mess in a way, you know, either distant families or individual families, things we don't talk about, things like this. So you're going to probably see a little bit of my dirty laundry that God brought me through, and it was life-changing, the hardest time in my life, but it was the biggest learning lessons that I could ever hope to have. I had. But there's one announcement that I am smart enough to remember. It's my anniversary today. 12 years. So this is for my wife. That's, I call this, that's wisdom, and this is insurance, I call it. Chocolate's bought me out of the doghouse a couple of times. All right, you probably don't know a lot about maybe how Maggie and I met. And so this will give you, it's kind of a funny tidbit, at least I think it's funny, a little embarrassing. But after this traumatic testimony that I'll show, I ended up getting to know Maggie. But this happened, and I'm sitting in my living room, and this is back in 2011, and so my two kids, we've just gone through a tremendous amount of hurt, and I'm not at all thinking about anybody. My goodness, that's the last thing in my head. And so the kids are watching TV. I'm sitting at the computer, and this is, I don't even think I even had a Facebook back then. It was emails, I think. And I was just looking through the business emails or something like this, and out of the blue, boom, a little square popped up on the screen. I'd never seen it and never seen it pop up again. And it was Christian Mingle. And I'm like, what the heck is Christian Mingle? And I'm like, I don't have a clue what it is. But curiosity got the best of me, and I'm like, Christian, I wonder it says Christian. And so I clicked on it, and it was a dating site. I'm like, oh, great. That's just what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for that. But curiosity got the best of me on that, too, because I'm like, well, I'm not doing anything tonight. So I click on that, and a few in, all of a sudden, out of the blue, a picture of Maggie pops up. And she's holding the little guy, Landon, that's not so little anymore. Little tiny little guy, and they're like in a pumpkin patch or something like this. And for whatever reason, it hit me, and I was just like, wow. And I don't know why, and this is the very first time I ever laid eyes on Maggie, and I sat back in my chair, and my kids heard me. I said, what is it? You know, first time. And had no clue. And so anyways, I'm like, well, what the heck? I'll just say hi. So I said hi. And a couple days go by, nothing, no hi back. And all right, well, send another message. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Wait a few more days, nothing back. All right, well, evidently this isn't going to, she's not interested or something like that. And I didn't really care a whole lot. And so I said, all right, this is my last message, da-da, if you don't respond, da-da-da, have a nice day, like this. And so then a few more days go by. And then out of the blue, I'm like, bing, Maggie. I'm like, what's this? Click, very first thing. Oh, sorry about that. I was waiting for the sale. so evidently there was a sale on that, and she couldn't respond. And so that the ongoing joke with us is I'm not quite worth full price, but I'm worth sale price. So that was funny. So the other funny thing that as I was getting to know her a little bit, she was very kind of timid and things like this, and the subject came up. I was like, well, it's like, is there anything that you'd change about me? She's seeing me like this. She's way in Connecticut, and I'm in Maine, and she's like, and because I'm thinking it's rhetorical, like not expecting anything back, and she goes, well, really? And she says, I kind of like natural hair color. And of course, before this, I had no clue. So I walked into I had a ponytail halfway down my back for 15 years and a goatee. That's what I look like. That was from age 20 to 35. And so when all this happened before, I walked into a hair salon or whatever like that, and Supercuts or something, and I didn't know which way was up, which way was down. Didn't really care. I said, "How about a haircut?" And she's like, well, "What do you want?" I said, "I don't care." And she's like, "Well, do you want anything else?" I said, "What else is there?" And she says, "Do you want hair color?" I said, "Sure." And so she highlighted my hair a little bit, but that's what Maggie says. She goes, "Well, I kind of like natural color hair." And I said, "Okay, well, that's not a big deal. I'll just grow it out anyways." And the next thing I said, "Is anything else?" And she goes, "Well, I kind of like clean shaven." And so I got to shave, I'm thinking this. Of course, I won that. See, I'm not clean shaven anymore, so I won that battle long term. But then, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, well, clean shaven, I can do that probably, da-da-da. And I says, anything else? And she goes, well, and this was a funny thing. This is when I was like, boy, this girl is different. She goes, of course, they cut my hair. It was halfway down my back, but then it got up to about my shoulder. So it wasn't really long, but it was just, fairly, not like this. And she goes, well, yeah, you ever thought of having short hair like a guy? And I was like, wow, that's about as direct as you're ever going to get. So we chuckle about that quite a bit. But anyways, happy anniversary. I love you. And God is faithful to bring you out of tough circumstances and still bring you happiness. So on we go. I was married before for quite a while, 14 years. I got married in 1997, and we met kind of in Bible college down in Alabama. And so I've always grown up hardworking, dad, good ethics. I was saved at 5, just know nothing else but just in the church. Life made sense. You just go to work, you work hard, good ethics. I didn't do anything veer way off or anything like this. Make mistakes like everybody does, but it was what I call normal life, what probably most would call a normal life. And so I got married in 1997, and then we have Kendra in year 2000, Avery in 2003. Life's hard. I'm starting a business, very, very, very hard. Trying to squeeze that little bit of money out of the little wage you're making, and then making mistakes along the way. It's real world college, but it kicks your butt. But I learned tenacity from my dad, so you just never give up. So somewhere along the way, things started to change, get a little odd. And I tried to, you choose to love your wife. You choose to love your husband. You don't always feel, totally in love every single day for years and years and years, oftentimes. But I found that you do. You can choose to keep that love alive and to choose, no, I'm going to forgive on and over and over and over again and keep loving. And that's what I was under total impression that was happening. We didn't fight a lot, very, very little, till this other direction came, and it was an interest that she had. And I won't say a lot of details because, like Steve, I respect that if the other person isn't here, they can't defend themselves. So it's really, I don't think that's right. But I'm just saying that there was some change that happened. There was an interest. I don't think, the best way I could explain is there wasn't a lot of fulfillment of being a mother and a wife. It didn't seem like it was enough. And so there was searching for something else. And that came into almost like performance. And then she found some friends, and it was more, like the juggling and the hula hoops and the spinning things, circus stuff almost, like performances. And so she started hanging out with some friends and things like this. And it was something that I didn't really identify with. I wasn't going to try to go and juggle and all that stuff. I was working, But it led her to a group of people that, in my opinion, I don't think were really the best. And boy, Satan can really find our cracks. He is incredibly talented at exploiting our biggest weaknesses, and they're all different. Mine's different than Maggie's and Anna's, and we all have our biggest weaknesses, and Satan, there's nothing that he likes more than to get between us and God. And that's, in my opinion, what happened. And it brought us a little more tension. She's gone a lot. I remember, as busy as I was, Kendra made the remark, she goes, Daddy's really busy, but now Mama's even more busy. And that was a lot, because I worked all the time. I worked 90 to 100 hours every week for years and years, all through my 20s. But it was for the family. That's how you show love. That was, I learned kind of from my dad. I'm not blaming my dad, but that's his love language, and I think it's mine. It's effort. It's you need something, you kill yourself to try to come through as best you can, And so a lot on your shoulders. But I still chose to love my wife. I still chose that this is who I married. Okay, her interests are here. Tried the best I could to follow. And till one day, and I'm thinking I have a great marriage, and actually to preface this, I'm not even going off my notes, I'm going off my memories, but in this performance thing, I came across a man I really respect, Bob Bemis. I don't know if somebody, you might know him, Kevin, but didn't really know a lot about him, but he had a business right in Levant, and it was laser engraving and wood carving machines and stuff like that. So my wife at the time wanted me to make some certain wooden custom thing, and I love challenges, so I was like, sure, I'll do it. So work all day, and then at 6 o'clock at night, I go over to his place, and we work till 9 o'clock at night on these things, trying to refine them, and we worked for 2 or 3 months making these. But that's how I got to know him, but it was out of the blue. It never really, I knew of him, but I didn't really know him, But we just chatted more. You're around that much time, and he's doing that, and you get to know him. And that was probably October when I first started, and then we go 2 or 3 months. I'm going to guess it was probably, by mid-March, about mid-March, I pop into his place, kind of like normal, sit down. He says, how you doing, Gabe? I said, oh, fine. He always saw me frazzled because I was always working so much and stuff. And he said out of the blue, this is the start of the big impact where everything happened. And this is a testimony of stuff I can't explain other than giving all the credit to God. That sometimes, not always, and I don't know why or when he chooses to, but sometimes he tangibly makes himself known. And he meets you. And he does things that you can't excuse, that you have to know that it's him. And there's a couple of instances that happened during this whole thing. And I'll never forget them, but they were the most impactful and powerful thing that's ever happened to me. I'll never forget them. One of them is here. And I'm sitting there, and Bob Bemis, out of the blue, just a random question. He says, how's your marriage, Gabe? Great. Wonderful. And he's like, really? And this is just, we never talked about stuff like that or anything like this. You just, out of the blue, that. And then I'm, oh, yeah. He's a I appreciate. I get it. I appreciate. He's concerned, or he's something more like that. No problem. He's a good-hearted guy. I got to assure him everything's fine, because we don't fight. Everything's fine. Da da da. And literally, I still remember this. I'm like, if he really knew how good my marriage was, he'd be jealous. That's the confidence, overconfidence, I thought. And that was in my head right then. But I really appreciated the guy. He was concerned. This is what people do. So he said, really? And he said, well, I got something to tell you. And this is verbatim, because I never forgot it, because I didn't know it then. But looking back, I remembered every word. And he goes, I got something to tell you. And he says, coming right up, you're going to hit a brick wall. And here I am, what was it, 14 years later, and I'm getting choked up because it was real. And I gave this testimony probably the first year after this happened, and I was in tears the whole time. It was Harvest Chapel. So this is the second time I've given the testimony like this, but it's, I guess when it's real, it's, I don't know, God's powerful. But he says, I got something to tell you. He says, you're going to hit a brick wall. You're not going to be able to get over it. He said, your life's going to change forever. And then he pointed at me. He says, Gabe, it's coming soon. And at the time, I'm just still excusing it. I'm like, I don't know what that even means. I mean, this is poor guy, He just, he doesn't, he cares and what like that, but I don't know. And so I just go about, I kind of brush it off, good-hearted guy, good guy, da-da-da. I have no idea what he's even talking about like that. But it was so clear that he said that, and it was so confident, and he pointed at me, and I said, all right, very confused. I don't know the exact time, because I don't know exactly when that happened, but I do know it was about within 30 days. So within 30 days, and I'm going to spare a lot of details that shouldn't be, really. We all have stuff that we don't need to be, the details of stuff like that. But anyways, this day, the short version on this is, one night, I knew who my wife was. The next day, I couldn't recognize who she is at all. And it was the most devastating thing. Steve Hall was with me the entire thing. Every minute of that day, that horrible day. My dad shut his greenhouse down. I just was in tears. I said, Dad, come. And he anyways, they walked through it with me. All the messy stuff happens, And I find myself in my kitchen in the evening, and my mom's taking my kids, and I'm in the kitchen, I'm standing in the kitchen, and my dad's there, because he's going to stay with me, whatever, and I am just, my head's spinning, I'm distraught as much as any person could ever be. I didn't know you could feel that much pain and still be breathing. I'd never, ever knew pain could be that deep and that hurtful. It was just excruciating. And then I started getting angry, because I have to preface something. I skipped past a very important thing, one of the most important things. Sorry. 3 years, okay? Can you come back 3 years prior to all of this? 3 years when life's normal, okay? I'm with my ex-wife. This is the big thing. This is this is God's blessing. And this is because I'm not going by my notes. 3 years prior to anything, so that puts it 2008. Life is just normal. I'm working. Everything's normal, what I consider normal. And I'm sitting in my living room, and I see on TV one of those prosperity preachers. And I don't know who it was, but I was watching there, and I do remember he said, sow your seed, and I think it was $500 or $5,000 or something like this, and watch your faith grow. as God blesses you back. And instantly, my head goes, why would that take faith? I was like, why would it take faith if you got more than you gave, you know? I was like, and then I got thinking again, and this is just out of the blue thinking this, what would take the most faith? This is all in my head, not audibly or nothing. And I'm like, what would take the most faith? Not if you got something, but if you lost something. Yeah. No, what would take even more faith than that? If you lost everything. Yeah. And then there was one more step. I said, if you lost everything and your faith was as strong after as it was before. Now that would be the biggest test of faith, if you lost everything. So for the next 3 years, I don't know why, but I couldn't shake that thought of that. It was always on my mind. Every week, it was always on my mind. And I tied this to earthly things because my brain is wired to fixing problems, business. Work hard, fix problems. Trust, money goes up and down in business. It's a wild roller coaster. Your cash flows up and down, up and down, up and down. And it's stressful, and so it's not for a lot of people. But I was like, I'm focused on this, and I'm thinking, I've got to stop letting my trust be with money. That's my learning lesson. I've got to trust God, and so I am literally working it, and I'm doing a halfway decent job in my head because I'm not forgetting this and I'm still going this. And I remember there was one day I was at my desk and I am stressed right out of my mind on funds. We're right down to nothing, right? And I go to the mailbox and I don't have any answers. I'm like, I don't think anybody owes us, and I go to the mailbox and there was a sizable check in there that took all my pressure off. And I didn't know it was owed to us. And I open it at my desk and it's at that moment and I open, I see that, I just throw it. I throw it and put my hand on my face. And I said, God, please don't let me trust so much in money. I am working on myself in real time. And it's like, I'm going to grow in this area. And so I am working at this and I'm making some progress and I'm building my faith and I'm getting better and better and stronger. And that's the preface because that was in my living room. That's the message I got. That's what I couldn't shake. I ended up, the really cool, praiseworthy thing to attribute this directly to God is I shared this, what God had laid on my heart to work on, to my brother-in-law that remembered it, Tim. I told it to my dad at his house once, what I was working on. I told it to Steve Hall at church in front of the congregation once on a Sunday evening because he says, what's been on your heart, anybody? And I said, well, and people were sharing, and then I shared. I said, what's been on my heart is if I lose everything, to be just as okay after as before. And I saw Steve. He was at Harvest Chapel, and he kind of looked down a little bit because I had no clue what he was going through. I had no idea because it was, private. So we both were walking down. We both walked down very hard paths the same exact time. And I said, what? Because it was a little odd pause. And he goes, oh, nothing. Just hitting a little home there. And the service went on. But everybody in the service heard me say that. It was always on my mind. Many people. So to bring it back now, I can rightfully do justice to God as I'm in the kitchen and my life is over. I don't know anything. It's just pain, all I feel, and I get angry. And I tell Dad, I've been working on the wrong thing for 3 years, Dad. And he goes, what do you mean? And I said, remember when I said if I lost everything, and I didn't even finish the word. And that's why it's powerful, because that moment, all I felt was love. And it hit me, like God, that this was my everything. This is what it was for, and this is what God knew was coming. Jesus knew this was coming. And he wasn't going to change free will. I still walked through it. But he loved me enough to prepare me as much as a person could, even 3 years ahead. And it was inexcusable because I told everybody what I was working on. And so I know this could go, evidently I think the problem is going to be going too long, not having enough material. So I'm going to sum up a few more things. Is there was no discussions. That blew my mind right there. That's the most impactful, one of the two most impactful moments. That was when it was intangibly, it was a tangible moment that God put on me that I couldn't excuse away. It was literally God injecting himself in our actual lives, not just reading, interpreting, and learning, you know. So there was no counseling willingness or anything like this, and I was out of options. I said, if there's no counseling or nothing, I'm going to go myself. I'm going to fix myself. If I'm the problem or anything like this, I'm going to find out. I'm going to do whatever, anything to save my family, save my marriage. What I knew made sense, and so I ended up going to Bangor Baptist. I was recommended John Caston, great guy. I sat down. He started off saying, he goes, I've done this a long time. He goes, just tell me what's happening. He says, I'll do my best to help you. But he seemed confident, and that's really what I needed. So I talked quicker than now. I talked nonstop for an hour. And I told him anything I could think of, anything negative, anything bad, anything to put me in a bad light, anything. Just tell me what to do to save my family. And about an hour, he stops me. He goes, oh, he goes, I think I got something for you. He says, I said, great, what? Anything, I'll do whatever. He says, I think you struggle with idolatry. And that really didn't make sense to me because I'm thinking the Old Testament idolatry. I'm like, idols and things. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, and then he said something that I've learned that it was ring true. He goes, I think you hold Jenny, my present wife at the time, he goes, in a place that only God should be. And I'm literally trying to fix myself. If I am doing something wrong, I am a blank canvas. Tell me something, I'll work on it. And I get thinking about it, and he goes, think whatever you do, what's your motivation behind it? If you go to church and she doesn't want to go, whatever, what's your driving motivation? Why do you work so hard? All this stuff. And I realized that was probably true. I did love God, and I played in the worship team back then, and I went to church, and God was important to me. But you still can have your priorities a little bit still messed up. And I didn't even realize they were that much messed up. Not that might have prevented anything, but it was how I could grow and work on myself. And so that was a learning lesson for me to never have your wife, your kids, anybody higher than God. And you got to watch out that you don't just absentmindedly do it. Another thing on the idolatry thing, which was, I don't think an accident either. I was driving down the road, and K-Love came on, and that evening, and I had to pull over because they said a quote. It hit home so much, and I stopped and I wrote this on my hand. I pulled it over immediately. I wrote on my hand, and it struck me so much that I actually had it put on a plaque, and I hung it on my wall so I'd never forget it, because it was what I was dealing with, and it was probably me. Is view life's difficulties as protection against the idolatry of self-reliance. That's worth even saying a second time. View life's difficulties, because we all have them, as protection. They help us. Remember that our true reliance needs to be with God, that He's the one with the answers, that we can't fix things all the time. And right then, I'm used to going through a lifetime of fixing every problem that I come up against until I hit this. There's no counseling, there's no nothing. I know nothing. There is nothing. a couple other things. Life got worse. They got worse than that. From the kitchen, it was a couple days later, my office secretary, Kathy, at the time, she was there, she was helping out. I had two different books. I had a Village Nursery and I had a Levant Landscaping. She took care of Levant Landscaping and I had Village Nursery because it was smaller and whatever. And my wife at the time just did the quick books or whatever like that. And when you have a marriage you don't care about, you stop caring about a lot of things. And she said, well, give me the box of your paperwork. I'll just find out where you're at. So I handed it to her, and I can't even function. You know, pain was so loud. I described it. It almost felt like you could hear pain. It was that traumatizing. So I remember stumbling out to the office a couple days after all this is happening, because you have to stay in business to some degree, but I really was MIA for a few days. And I lost 15 pounds in 8 days because I didn't eat anything. But so I step out in the office, and like I said, it got worse. I felt like absolutely Job. I opened the door, and she says, well, and she's very direct, says it how it is, cookie cutter. Well, this is where you're at, da-da-da. And I look, and I'm not prepared because I'm just, she says, you owe $20,000. I says, oh my goodness. She goes, and this is, you're not done yet. That's just like Kathy. She goes, this is what's past due, $20,000. $40,000 instantly. That's past due or due right now. And I'm like, oh my goodness, how can I handle this? I get a call, ring. It gets worse. My dad's on the line. I was in the middle of a job in Hamden on the condominiums, and I had been MIA for like 4 days. And he said, so-and-so? I said, yeah. He goes, I hate to tell you this, Gabe, but you got to get on that job. He goes, the guy tracked me down. He said to send a message that if you don't get on that job, he's going to sue you. This is looking at that. I'm going to get sued. I said, doesn't he oh my goodness, And I stumble, I get into my one dump truck at the time. I drive it over there. It's the last thing I want to do. And I start digging fill. I put it into the dump body. First load. And I back over. It's all mud. And I back over. My wheels go down. Boom. Oh, no, God. No, please help me get out. Please help me get out. Put in drive. Sing. Now nothing. Look under the drive shaft's turning. The rear end stopped. And it's just spinning. I'm thinking, that was the lowest. That was when I called my dad again. And I said, Dad, my shoulders are breaking. Because it's just too much. It was too much. And he said, we'll get through it. And so it just is, I don't know, somehow I just functions through it. You know how it goes. Everybody here has been through rough things, and when you put one foot in front of the other, you keep moving. And that's basically how I describe the next few months. I went through every emotion known. Nothing worked. Nothing could reach any heartstring or anything like this. There just was no chance. And another notable, I guess, learning lesson through this thing was really important was you've heard with emotions, you go through denial, you go through hurt and pain and then anger and bitterness and rage and all that stuff. There's successions of how grief works and stuff. Well, I found myself about January. This happened April 16th. The whole event blew up on April 16th, which I then, in transparently, found out that was my wife's birthday. So I thought that was a little interesting too. But January comes by, and I am really struggling with bitterness and rage because now I'm angry. I didn't sign up for this. I was naive in teenage years. I was like, why do people don't have to get divorced? Just honor your vow. Suck it up and figure out what's wrong and don't give up. As long as you don't give up. That works if both are that way. What I realized is sometimes it can be one person's choice over the other person's choice. One person wants to preserve something and the other person is just checked out, and there's no changing. I found myself there at a really, really tough spot in January, and I called up Steve because it was eye-opening because it was almost turning uncontrollable. I was just so mad, so angry, so bitter, so like this. And I called Steve, and he says, "Come over." He was renting one of my houses, and he says, "Come over here." He says, "I'll fix some eggs or something for you, whatever." Like this. I come over there, and he told me something. He probably didn't come up with it, but it was something I had never heard, and that's the other quote. And he told me, he said, "You're having a hard time with this right here." He said, "I found that if you find yourself struggling with bitterness or unforgiveness, you may not have arrived at the point where you truly understand what you've been forgiven for." We don't even have a right not to forgive if we're going to rely on God to. I am totally indebted to God to get me to heaven, because it's certainly not me. It didn't just magically go away, but it's something I never forgot, and it did make more sense, and it did ease things, because you just can't hold on to stuff forever. It's just literally poison to do that. To wrap things up, because we actually are getting close to near the end of that, is this was a second thing. In the kitchen was my first thing, where I just couldn't excuse that because I told everybody, and he met me right there and said, I love you so much that I'm preparing you. And this was the other one, is I was on my motorcycle riding to Bob Bemis's house one evening, and the sunset was out there. And I realized I literally had no clue about anything. At that moment, that's when I don't know if I'll go bankrupt. I don't know if I'll move. I don't know what to do with my kids. I'm self-employed. How do you take care of kids and run a business? I don't know how you do that. I don't know anything. I don't have any. I'm rejected. My marriage is gone. I have nothing. There's nothing I know or have confidence in this world at all. And I'm riding there and realize I hit the end of myself. There was nothing that I controlled. And I had no clue what tomorrow was going to be at all. And that's the other thing I hope all of you hit sometime. And you may have already hit this. And I seriously, because it's the biggest gift, hands down, that you could ever be given in life is... I was riding my motorcycle, and I realized I was at the end of me. I didn't know anything. But then I hit the absolute best gift in the entire world. Jesus was enough. That was all I had. That's all I knew. It was a lifeline. And he actually was enough. Without the kids, without the ex-wife, without money, without bankruptcy, whatever. That was the core. That's what broke Gabe down to when there's nothing else. Is Jesus enough? And it's different to learn it right out of the Bible and just know the stuff. When you experience it, that he literally actually did. It's like you walk through a fire. You passed a test. You realize, wow, that's how people, endure martyrdom. Not that I was, but I experienced that he was enough, just him. And that's, I think, the place where he wants to be. He wants to be that lifeline to us, be there for us and comfort us. And he showed me how much he loved me. He showed me in tangible ways. I remember being even you can't excuse. I was sitting at my desk, and I had this terrible thing of just hope that maybe she changed, and maybe she'll, and Facebook's a wonderful and terrible thing, you know? And at that moment, it was a terrible thing because I'd click on to just try to find the hope. Maybe she's changed. Maybe there's anything I can pull on it. And it always made me nauseous because nothing changed, and it was always sick to my stomach, and it always made me in a bad space. And I remember specifically, and didn't have to happen, didn't change anything, but I remember sitting there, and I'm just like, maybe I should check again. Maybe it's hope. And I was like, I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't check, because I knew it wasn't going to be good for my mental health, you know. And I got my finger right on the mouse button. I'm right about to click and ring. My phone rings right then. And I answer it. I look at it, and it's Bob Bemis. Hello? How you doing, Gabe? That's all I said. He goes, you're home, aren't you? I said, yeah. And he goes, just past your house. I'll be right there. And he pulled in, walked in, and I'm standing in the kitchen, and he didn't know my finger was on that. It's not that it would have been any different than before, but it's the little things that God He didn't leave me alone. He kept sending me these little messages, you're not walking alone. And Bob came in, and he says, funny thing, he says, I was driving by your house just now, and God told me to give you a call. I said, what? And he says, he did? He goes, clear as a bell. I was like, wow. And I told him. And like I said, if I clicked on that, it just wouldn't have been, but that's how much God loved us. Even the little things, he's going to walk through whatever you've faced, or whatever you're going to face. I made the choice not to run away from God at that minute. I didn't make every right decision. I screwed up still. Thank God. God is a God of forgiveness. But he will walk with you. And that changed my whole life. My relationship with God got incredibly stronger. I was shocked through this whole thing. I could not believe how strong Satan was. It blew my mind that he could be so destructive and so powerful. But when I'm sitting on that motorcycle and I'm realizing, Jesus, this is enough, it literally blew my mind how much stronger Christ was than Satan. It's not even a contest. He is incredibly strong, Satan. But it's not even a contest with Christ, because God doesn't leave you there. Bob said that, he goes, God will use this for his purposes. He goes, what you're going through, he goes, you used it. Bob had gone through a divorce, and he says, you'll be used to help people, and I hope he does. If nothing else, that's an absolute testament that God is real, and God meets you through hurt and pain. And boy, isn't life, it's a lot of joys, it's a lot of pain. It's constant. And I think that's a purpose of church, because the church functioned as a body for me. They came around me because I was pretty open. I was crushed right up there. A testament to the Truigies. People probably know the Truigies, Truigie Apple Orchard. God sent people. They just picture being me, and you're crushed, and you're in front of the church, and Mrs. Truigie comes up. Here's the situation. She knows I'm self-employed. She comes up in front of the church, because I'm still playing. Because I'm like, I've got to praise God still through this, And she comes with tears at the end of the service. She comes up with tears. She goes, Gabe, what are you going to do with the kids? I have no idea. I was like, I don't know. And this shows you the Truigie's heart. Because she knew. She knew. I plow snow. I've gone 40 hours straight plowing, nonstop. Come home, get 4 hours sleep, go another 24. It's just incredible sometimes, and you're a slave to the weather and business and all this stuff. And she said, without even hesitation, she goes, Gabe, she goes, by the way, the kids were kind of forgotten too for a couple of years. They were homeschooled, but they weren't homeschooled, if that makes sense. There was preoccupation. So the kids got incredibly behind. My 8-year-old, Avery was 8, Kendra was 11. Avery at 8 didn't know how to hold a pencil. I kind of feel a little blame, but I do and I don't, because I was doing what I thought I was supposed to do. I kind of blindly trusted, which I think is still okay some. But Mrs. Trugy told me, she goes, I go by your house every day. She goes, I'll stop and I'll pick them up every day. She goes, I'll bring them to my house. She goes, I'll school them. She goes, I'll find out where they are. I'll school them every day. She did that personally. She has a master's in education, and she took my kids to her house every single day, and she caught them up, and she evaluated them, because that's what her skill set is. And she says, she goes, if you have to plow, she goes, we have an extra bedroom. She goes, I don't care if you drop them off at 1 a.m. She goes, our place is your place. She goes, whatever you need. How do you ever repay that? It's impossible. You can't. They wouldn't take money. I got them to take some hanging baskets every year. That was about it, But that doesn't even come close. And she's like, I think you've done enough at one point. And I'm like, are you kidding? You kidding? 2 years? My kids, the most precious things. My biggest fear was my kids would go down a wrong track through all this. My kids struggled. Depression, some needed counseling. Understandably, it really messes with the kids' security and all that stuff like that. But my biggest fear, my biggest prayer was answered. It's the best thing a parent could ever get, was my kids turned out. I couldn't be more proud. Both of them are married to wonderful Christian spouses. My daughter's building a house. She sings in a praise team. Her heart's for God. Avery is the biggest heart I think I've come across. And it's not because he's my son. It's a gift. I think it's a God-given gift. He has empathy for people. And I couldn't be more proud. And God honored that. He doesn't leave you in your mess. My biggest fear was I couldn't even control how they would end up. I did everything in my possible, but it still was who knows, And God brought him out the other end, And he brought me here. He didn't leave me here. So that's pretty much my testimony midlife, and I can't be more thankful to God. This is a really nice, comforting verse too, that kind of encompasses, I guess, my view of God now. Is Isaiah 54:10. For the mountains may depart, and the hills be removed. And that was what my life was. It was removed. But my steadfast love shall not depart from you, and my covenant of peace shall not be removed, says the Lord, who has compassion on you. So I guess the last thing I'm just to dwell on this next week is Jesus, only him, enough for you? No matter what you go through. And think of the strongest bond you have. If you're married and you've been married a long time, that might be it. Literally think, if that was put aside, what life would be like, and would Jesus be enough to get you through that? And I'm here to say he actually is, and that's an incredible gift that he gave me, through the whole thing. So, yes, let's pray. Heavenly Father, I just thank you. Thank you for opportunity to share what you did in my life, even though it was so incredibly tough, a tough road to walk through. Thank you for not leaving me and helping my family come through it. Thank you for the gift of church and the people and their hearts that wrapped around me and functioned the way you intended. I just pray that you be with everybody here, and whatever they're going through or whatever they may face in the future, that they'd remember how loving you are and how caring you are, and how powerful you are. And that even when there's no lifeline or security left that they might feel is there, that you are enough. And I just ask that you just walk with them like you walk with me. In your name, amen.